Welcome to the Washington Pearl Workshop. In this series, in this playlist, we're going to talk about different ways we can maintain and customize the wardrobe we already have. So in this first video, we're going to be talking about replacing or adding on buttons. So if you've lost your button, maybe it popped off, or maybe you just have a vintage piece that you don't want to get rid of, you want to update it, bring it into the new by just switching out the buttons. This video is for you.
They say he has grit. I wanted a man with grit.
Okay, so let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is grab your canvas, right? Grab the garment that you're going to be working on. Once you've picked that out and laid it out pretty flat, you're going to need a couple things. Small scissors. I prefer small scissors over big scissors because you don't want to make mistakes and cut the garment that you're working on. It's easier to have something with a little bit more control. If you're adding buttons for the first time, you're going to need some type of chalk, and you're going to need a tape measure or a ruler, okay? You're obviously going to need a needle and the buttons that you're going to be working with, and thread. When we get to thread, I think it's really important that you complement, meaning match perfectly, or that you do a contrast on the other side of the color wheel. So think about that. All right, let's get started. If I measure from the seam to where the larger part of that hole is, I'm going to get somewhere around 1/2 of an inch, right? That's about standard. I take my chalk and go ahead and square that off, right? And then I'm going to take 1/2 inch up here towards the top. And you want to make sure you're on that seam and go ahead and strike that, right? Square that off. Line up those two lines and chalk it down. Just line up those buttonholes and go ahead and mark the chalk in the center of each of those buttonholes. All right. Now, it's sewing time. So we've got our button points laid out, and now we've got our button that we're going to put on. We need to grab our thread and a needle and go ahead and thread your needle. There's not really a trick to it. Any simple knot will work. Pull it tight. I'll look at the intersection, what we made before, right? The key idea is that we want the button on the intersection and not our needle, because that's going to push it offset a little bit, right? Now, what you want to do is take the needle just about a millimeter up from that intersection, and you're going to put your button onto your needle and go ahead and pass through. Now you're going to bring this all the way up. Now go ahead and orient that button the way you want it to be. Now, go ahead and pass through exactly where you want it to be. Go ahead and pull that tight, nice and clean, okay? Now, go ahead and pass through this intersection on this button 2 more times. You want to keep your needlework on the back end fairly close to the point where you started. Pull it through. Now, let's switch to the opposite buttonholes 3 times. All right. But now I need to create a way that my button isn't so close to my fabric. I need to give it some lift off of the fabric, right? Take my needle, coming from the underside, fairly close to the same area, go through and behind my button. Behind my button, like this. Come all the way through. Now, I'm going to make 3 loops around my button. Okay? Now that I'm back in the same place I started from, I'm going to go back behind my button and take my needle back to the other side of the fabric, right? Just like that. Pull it all the way through. Now, The only thing left to do is create a closing point. We don't want this button to come off, right? What we need to do is just go through our fabric just a little bit and then back out, right? Just like that. We're going to pull this down, but not all the way to the end. Not all the way to the end. We're going to leave a small loop. Just like that. Now with that loop, we're going to go back on the underside, go through, and pull it tight. Now we have secured our button to our fabric. I'm going to take my scissors and just cut off these loose ends. And this is the key to quality workmanship, which is the point where we want to get to. I really hope you enjoyed the content we produced for you today. If you liked it, please like our video, subscribe to our channel. You're going to see more amazing content just like this. Stay dapper.